Chapter 13, Kshetra Kshetragyam Vibhaga Yogaha. Vibhaga Yogo. So, there are only two things. We are already aware of it. Matter and spirit. Kshetra Kshetragyam. If we insist on living only in the realm of matter and insist that that is all that my identity is and nothing beyond it, in that case what happens to us? So in the realm of Kshetra, that is the word used for matter, in verse number 7, Bhagwan says, Ichha dvesha sukham dukkham sanghataschetana dhritihi. In this field, the field of matter, Kshetra, in this field you can experience so many things. Ichha, desire, dvesh, aversion, that is dislike, and of course sukha dukkha, it goes without saying. And also you experience intelligence and fortitude, even all the positive qualities. Everything is an experience and experienced in this field. Etak kshetra samasena, it is said in the 7th verse, 13th chapter. Savikara mudahritam. These are all modifications, because it's only in the world of matter that you will have modifications. That means anything that changes from one thing to another. Sukh changes into dukh, dukh into sukh, and so on and so forth. And I may be energetic one day, and then my energy goes down another day, and I'm extremely despondent and feeling dissipated of energy. Why is all this going on? All modifications, changes, vikara are possible only in the realm of matter, kshetra. Are we kshetra? Yes, of course we are, because we experience all these things. But are we only kshetra? Are we only this bundle of matter? That is the question. And if not, then how are we able to distinguish between kshetra, kshetragyam, which means this world of matter and the realm of spirit? Without that spirit, I cannot function anyway. That means that spirit is there somewhere, functioning within me, not far from me, not locatable in me, but in me, around me somewhere. It has to be there. Otherwise, I would not be able to function the way I do. But I cannot distinguish it from my material body, and many of us don't even believe, that श्रद्धा भी नहीं है कि हाँ हम में भगवान बसते हैं. You can call it Bhagwan. It becomes a matter of bhakti and shraddha if you talk about it as Bhagwan. But it is pure consciousness. It is something that enlivens the entire being, that gives it the power, that gives it the shakti and the whole power behind it. How? Now, if we are able to distinguish between these two, that's the point at which we can say, aha, am I just this body? And this body is going through so many experiences of sukha, dukkha and ups and downs and trials and tribulations. I'm tired of all this. And for how many lives ahead am I going to do it? And then we begin to distinguish. This vibhaga of the two is the main topic of chapter 3. Kshetra Kshetragyam. Find out who we are apart from this bundle of matter. So Bhagwan says, okay, hold on, not so fast. He says, even if you wish to know this very, very subtle tattva, this very essence of which you are made, it's like the wave saying, where's the water, where's the water? Arey bhai, you are made out of that water. Who is going to explain to the wave? Because the wave insists and says, no, I cannot see water. I can only see my shape, my size, the froth and the foam, and I can see that I am greater than the other waves, and you know how beautifully I dance on the ocean. I can see all that. But tattva, the essence, no, you have to tell me. So the ocean has to explain to the wave, Bhaiya, you are part of me. You are me. You are consciousness, you are Paramatma. But how difficult it is for the wave to believe that. It's the same for us. We swim in it, we are in it, we are made of that tattva, and then we look around and say, no, this whole sansar is what I see, and I am acting and interacting in this world of sansar, and therefore all that I see is the modifications on the surface, like the wave on the surface of the ocean. I can see the modifications of what? Of all my reactions to the sansar. Sansar is also jad. Jad means made of matter, and I am also jad, made of matter, and it's only this the qualities of one matter interacting with qualities of another matter. Guna guneshu vartante. Is that all the action that is going on in the world? Seems to be pretty meaningless. What's the whole purpose of it all? It has to lead somewhere. I mean, and endlessly it can't go on. So that's when the spiritual jigyasa, the real thirst for knowledge arises, when someone sees the meaninglessness of continuing to experience all the same sukha dukha vikar of this world. Bhagavan says, look, even if you want to know this very subtle tattva, there is something you have to shed. There are some things you have to shed because they are clouding you. And they are so heavily bound in you, and you are bound so heavily to these things that it's not possible for me to show you the very subtle, the very sukshma tattva of this consciousness, which is you, so close to you and so sukshma, and you are dwelling in the world of sthul. So that's why he says, what is it I want you to shed? Okay, so verse number 8, he says, amanitvam adambhitvam. Make sure that you are living in humility. Give up your ahankar. Ahankar of what? This sansar doesn't belong to us. So what is there to give up? But yes, we live in arrogance. Adambhitvam, what is the hypocrisy? Dambha is hypocrisy. Pretending to be what we are not. Adambhitvam, he says, please give it up. Ahimsa, I mean not ahimsa, himsa, please give up, and live in forgiveness. Kshantira arjavam, live in arjavam. Straightforwardness, simplicity, utter simplicity of the mind. The mind, when we interact with people or at work or with our relatives, it need not go into overdrive, trying to take advantage of them, trying to manipulate them into doing what we wish them to do. You know, it's a kind of manipulation. Arjavam. My favorite word. It simply means be simple in the mind. And he says, why is Bhagavan insisting that Arjun and we, all of us, have these qualities of amanitvam, adambhitvam? This is clouding us too heavily. It's weighing us down. It's like I'm unable to fly. It's like being anchored down to the ground. And then he also says, I want you to do certain things also. That is, acharyopasanam. Acharya, the teacher, do an upasana. Now, upasana is a loaded word. We cannot, in this day and age, we can't get into worship of acharyas. But yes, there is another thing we can do. And that is when we learn something from about the scriptures, from any teacher, the scriptures is what we are meant to do upasana of. So, the teacher is a medium. And how do we do upasana of scriptures, by the way? So, we have to live those values. We have to try and inculcate them. How? Through contemplation. If we read about them, we hear the words of Krishna, we are inspired, and then we go straight out into the world and it's forgotten in the next moment. No, we need silence and solitude and some contemplation to say, if I am to lead a life different from the one I have been leading in the sansar, with materialism and successes and failures and the whole lot that sansar throws at us, then I have to change track. And how do I do it? What's going on in my mind? What is the purpose? There are some questions in my mind. Dwelling on those questions and reflecting and contemplating is the way of the Shastras. Shravanam, Mananam, Nitidhyasanam. These are the 3 steps the Shastras have told us to get to transform our lives towards moksha. Shravanam, of course, is the listening of the scriptures, listening to them through any source. Shravanam. Mananam is what we have to do. So he says, Acharyopasanam in the second line. Shaucham. Of course, keep your mind clear of all the impurities. And we are well aware of the impurities. It's just that we don't want to admit that these impurities exist in us. If we don't admit it, if we don't see it, if we are not aware of it, how can they be washed out? And what are these impurities? We can find them out only when we are introspective. Am I feeling jealous? Am I taking trying to persuade someone to do something that I wish them to do. Persuasion is a form of manipulation, J. Krishnamurti used to say. Never try to persuade someone into something. Why? You can suggest, you can advise, but persuasion is like manipulating them to do what you wish them to do. So, am I manipulating? Am I getting too attracted to the objects of the world? When I go window shopping, I end up doing impulsive shopping and buying a whole lot of this and that, which I really don't need and doesn't get used. So, am I using my wealth well, or am I using it excess wealth, that is beyond what I have already used for my comfort? That wealth, am I using it well? All this I can only tell myself if I'm getting into greed or excessive spending, or any of the excesses actually, apart from kama, krodha, mada, lobha, moha, greed. If I am speaking to people, am I getting into a kind of arrogance? Oh, this is what I do and this is what I am learning. But anyway, I need not go into impurities. It's for us to sift through the millions of thoughts that are going through the mind all the time, and try to keep the mind clear of all impurities. Bhagwan says, I need that shaucham, that pure mind. Apart from that exercise that you do, that is Arjun and the rest of us, he cannot even reveal the truth to us. So then what kind of seekers would we be if we are indulging in all kinds of things, in the mind, that is? Physically we may, because we are living in sansar. But the mind is also dwelling in the sansar. Then how can we come closer to God? So he says, okay, shaucham and sthairya. Stharyam, he says, is your steadfastness. Are you casually taking your jigyasa about God? Okay, if you're casual, you'll get casual answers. And if you are steadfast and say, no, I'm not going to give up unless, not only in this life, but continued life, I'm going to pursue this goal. That is your steadfastness. Bhagwan wants it, stharyam. And Atma Vinigraha. That, of course, he has insisted in many, many ways. Many, many words he has used to talk about self-control. Atma Vinigraha. Having said that, Bhagwan says, I want some more things from you. If you are a seeker, and if you have belief in me, and if you are my real Shraddhalu in the Bhakti language, and in the Gyan language, if you are the real seeker of the ultimate truth, that absolute which you want to unravel in this life, in a Gyan Bhasha, if we say, then Bhagwan says, I need a few more things. And what's that? That is verse number 9. Indriyartheshu vairagyam anahankara evacha. Indriyartheshu vairagyam. Many of these things he has mentioned in different ways, but the insistence upon indifference. Vairagyam means indifference. To what? To objects. Which objects? Objects that are attached and attracted to the indriya, to the senses of ranga, roop, ras, gandha, the senses of touch and smell and taste and sight. Those objects which are always attracted to the indriya, I want you to distance yourself from those things. Who says? Krishna. Have some vairagyam, he says in the first line. Indriyartheshu vairagyam. And anahankara evacha. Ahankara is a word by now we are familiar. It has come before. Anahankara, pride and arrogance. And I want anahankara, absence of egoism in you. The moment you are filled with ego, I am this, I am that, how can I ever show you that sukshma tattva, that very subtle essence which dwells in you, around you, and in the cosmos, and in everybody else around you, and everywhere, and yet we miss it, and of course my favorite example is that of the looking from a tower. I may have a house in the tower or in a hotel building, and I look out at the city below, and I see the city below, and I see all the lights and the movement and the traffic, but there is something through which I can see from the window, and that's the glass. But do I see the glass? And if I say, look at the glass, At that time, I was looking down below at the traffic, and then I pull my sight back and I focus on the glass and say, oh yeah, okay, it's there. But so the consciousness is so subtle. It's like you see it and yet you miss it. It's you and yet we feel, ये तो मैं नहीं हूँ, मैं तो फला फला हूँ, मेरा नाम ये है, मेरा रूप ये है, मेरा औधा ये है, मेरा my family relationships ये है, and my professional relationships and my experiences, मैं बचपन में ये करता था. All my bundle of experiences and achievements and relationships is who I am. वो सब नीचे का traffic दिख रहा है. Lots and lots of movement below. All that movement is on the surface. You see it and yet you miss it. It's as subtle as that. So, and Bhagwan is very clear. He says, if you are not emptied of your own egoism, anahankara evacha, in the first line, it's like the Zen master who was approached by a disciple, and you've heard this story before, and the master said nothing. He said, so the disciple said, I want you to accept me as your disciple. So the master said nothing. He just laid out cups of tea, and from the kettle he began to pour out tea into his cup and then into the cup of the prospective disciple. So the tea that he kept pouring came up to the brim of the cup, and it poured over. And he still kept pouring tea into his cup. The disciple looked up, because Zen masters don't speak much typically. So you're supposed to understand their language, their communication. So the disciple looked up, was shocked, and he left because he understood the message of the master. The disciple understood. What was the message? The message was, hey look, if you're coming to me with a cup full of ahankara and full of attractions towards the objects of indriya, and also feeling dambha, hypocrisy about, oh, I am this and that, and I may not be, and I'm still pretending. Dambha, darpa, kama, krodha, your cup is full, my dear. I cannot fill it with anything else. Leave alone the subtlest of tattvas. Subtlest of knowledge needs so much of silence, so much of solitude, so much of expanse, and so much of space. And you're coming to me, and in a little cup, which is our minds, a small little limited cup with a small ego, small cup with a big ego, you can call it, is jam-packed. So the Zen master says, I cannot offer you anything. Leave alone discipleship. Whatever I say will just be like tea or water flowing over the cup. मतलब आप सुनेंगे, हम कई सालों से सुन रहे हैं, but it just flows over. यही होगा. So that's why Bhagwan says, anahankara evacha. क्या आप अपना ego aside रख के आ सकते हैं? Then I'm ready. Krishna is ready, and Arjuna is lucky. We are also lucky. We don't have Sakshat Krishna telling us the ultimate truth, but we have the scripture right there in front of us. In the most ancient of languages, Sanskrit, in the most divine of languages, which we are able to read through translations, and we are sitting by that text. I will not believe that we are not lucky. Yes, we are. And yet, if we don't put aside our ahankar and just go to him with folded hands and with an empty heart and say, I just need the ultimate truth, that's all, I am nothing. So, now, Vairagyam is a word which has been used here in the first line, and I need to dwell a little bit on it. Why? Because this is a much maligned word. It has been overused to the extent that it is just equated with complete renunciation. And therefore, the moment we hear in the scriptures the word Vairagya, we say, okay, let's go to the next verse, because this is not for me. Vairagya is not for me. You see, Vairagya is for the renunciates. It's for the sannyasis. I don't think this part is for me. Let's move on. No, we cannot. This is one of the key, if not the only central message of the Gita. Detachment and Vairagya. We just cannot overlook it. And we cannot say it is for the renunciate, it's for us. So let's dwell on it a little bit, on this particular word, Indriyadeshu, Vairagyam. Now, what is the definition? Let's understand. How is it defined? It simply means that there is no khichav, there is no pull, there is no attraction of the outside world to which we are dragged. What are we dragged towards? All the objects of the senses. Indriyartheshu is what Bhagavan says. Now we are that khichav, that pull, that gravitational pull, the way we are dragged, we gravitate towards certain things that we love. So it could be restaurants or malls or movies or OTT platforms or shopping, or I don't know, but we gravitate almost helplessly, almost as if we are not in control of our senses, which is true. That Bhagavan says definition is not to have that pull, not to allow that pull over us is vairagyam. Okay, how am I going to go up into the mountains? Of course not. So vairagya actually requires a great deal more of, as Bhagavan said, stharyam in the last verse. Stharyam means if you are steadfast, and we know that when we are steadfast in achieving something or wanting something, we have been steady and we have been consistent and we have been at it for years till we achieved it. So he says, despite living in and around all the objects, if you can, because all these objects are needed around me to maintain my life, to maintain my families. Of course, you have to live in and around those objects, right, for my Jivan Nirvaha. But the thing is that the moment the mind realizes just one moment, please. The moment my mind realizes that, oh, this is all child's play, this belongs to the world of matter, everything I have to do anyway because my body is also matter, I will be part of it, but I am not going to be entangled in it. The moment you realize that, are we then attracted to it? Okay, then we say, no, I haven't thought about it because I am so steeped in it. Yes, we haven't thought about it. But think of it in this way. There was a time in our childhood when we were so attracted and so excited about the toys with which we played. But are we attracted to the same toys now? No, maybe we are attracted to different things. But to those same toys? No. Why? Because we say, oh, I have matured. So, in the same way, a seeker, a spiritual seeker matures spiritually out of all these attractions of the sansar. So right now, if a child is playing with his toys, do you think you are going to be high and mighty and say, oh, how silly of you to play with those toys, I'm not going to entertain you? No, of course not. You can still go down on your knees and play with the little child and enjoy the toys, but your mind is not inexorably entangled with those toys. You see the attitude? The attitude is where the difference lies. And now you can say, yes, of course I can drive a Toyota if I need to. I'm not going to hanker for it or crave for it if I don't have one. But if I have one and I know how to drive, yeah, sure, I'm going to do it. But it's the same as playing with the children's toys and or playing house with the children, and yet not having that bhava, ye mera hai, ye mere liye hai, mujhe iska bhog karna hai. No, we don't do that. It's the same thing that Bhagavan says. A spiritually mature person can play in the world like playing house with children and then be about it. Because the world is full of all these things, Rang, Roop, Ras, Gandha. And the other thing is, not only is the world full of it, but I am also condemned because I engage in all these objects with two strong emotions. If they are strong, Rag and Dvesha, I like, I dislike, I like, I dislike, and my life becomes limited to these two. Now Rag and Dvesha have become my ambassadors of engaging with the sansar outside. How do I get rid of it? Now Bhagavan says, listen, simple, it's very simple. First of all, your indriyas hungrily will not go out into the world greedily if you realize what? Realize what? In the second line he says, Krishna, he will give the solution very compassionately. He says, think of these things. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukha dosha nudarshanam. Janma Mrityu, the pain, the inevitable pain and sorrow of Janma and Mrityu, and the repetition of the same, and Jara, of course, old age, and Vyadhi, sickness. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Who has escaped these four in his or her life? Who? No one. So, Gautam Buddha also, his life transformed completely only and only when he saw these four visions of a dead man and of a sick man and of a very old person. And then he began to ask questions. I want, it was not his dukkha, by the way. He was living in the lap of luxury in a palace, well protected from all the dukkhas, so-called. And his father thought that he had protected his son. But his propensity for knowledge drove him out, and when he saw this, he said, not my sorrow, I want an answer to their sorrow, to the sorrow of mankind. Because the answer to mankind's sorrow is the answer to my sorrow. Same thing. I'm part of mankind, right? So, it's the same three visions that transformed Buddha's life and gave rise to this entire philosophy of Buddhism, which is just, you can say, an offshoot of the same Sanatan Dharma. जन्म मृत्यु जरा व्याधि, उसको क्या करना है? कृष्णा बताइए तो सही. अरे वो कह रहे हैं उसके दुख दोषानुदर्शनम, इन सब का जो इनएविटेबल दुख, जो इविल इन सब में छुपा हुआ है ना, इविल, पेन, इनएविटेबिलिटी ऑफ डिसइंटीग्रेशन, इसका दुख और दोष, इसका इविल और दुख, अनुदर्शनम, सिर्फ देख लो, पहचान लो, अनुदर्शनम, as simple as that. And you may say, no Krishna, I think this is a bit of a shortcut. No, but this is how Buddha also transformed his life ना. उन्होंने सिर्फ देखा था, उन्होंने तो सिर्फ outer देखा था. भगवान is saying, see the actual sorrow around you, the sorrow of people around you. Buddha had seen all strangers around him. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukha, Dosha, Nudarshanam. Yes, simple. He has given a solution. But why is it that every time there is dukkha we complain and we hurt inside? Dukkha means also of our relatives and friends and dear ones, of course, because it causes us the same dukkha. How is it that we never ask that question, is there something beyond this? Am I just this bundle of body which is meant to experience, the mind experiences all the dukkha? No, we go through all the sorrow and we go through a myriad of emotions. It could be anger or bitterness or self-pity, or it could be also the reverse. It could be turning towards God in a form, or in the form of a savior. Not knowing the ultimate truth, that's okay, but as some kind of a savior. At least that is a belief that there is a higher power. So Bhagavan says that's also okay. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Now, the moment you see that this is what is happening everywhere, and this is going to happen in every life, is it that we are going to then contain ourselves, confine ourselves to more and more of food and clothing and achievement and promotion and emotional comfort and ornamentation of the same body which is growing old and weak and infirm and aging, as Bhagavan has said, the same body, but are we going to continue the mind dwelling on the ornamentation of the body? It doesn't mean that we don't keep it clean and beautiful and aesthetic, but the mind dwelling only on the ornamentation of our homes and our bodies and etc. Can we lift our minds above it? Like many people, when they are confronted with dukkha and sorrow, they are supposed to see the evil of it and know that that is the truth of everyone, everything that exists in the world of matter, kshetra, world of matter, not only my body, but even that table on which I'm writing right now. It is meant to disintegrate into the earth. Maybe it will take longer, but it will disintegrate. So what's wrong with my ornamenting my body and my house and keeping myself preoccupied with all my emotional comforts and clothing and achievement? So what's wrong? What happens is that slowly all these things become our addictions, and it becomes our way of life, which has become our lifestyle in any way, in any case. That lifestyle, it just becomes an addiction. We are unable to pull out of it to look at anything higher. So Bhagwan says, even if I point out, you will not be able to see it. Because then you will say कि कहाँ मुझे नहीं दिख रहा है, because the mental space is completely occupied, it chock-a-block full of all these things, the mental space. And tattva bodh, Bhagwan keh rahe, tattva means the very essence of life, the essence of this existence, this cosmos, and of ourselves, which is the same tattva. That essence ka bodh, that is knowledge, uske liye jagah kahan hai? Tattva bodh is a word which means knowledge of that essence. Uske liye jagah kahan hai hamare life mein? Bhagwan says, sorry, you have to make space by this some kind of vairagyam, some kind of emptiness, some kind of space. Now, but how to avoid, being engaging so heavily, let me call it, there's no other word, engaging so strongly and heavily with the sansar. So going ahead, not in this verse, but ahead in the 11th verse, Bhagwan has said, very simple, arati jana samsiddhi. Arati samsiddhi means, aratihi, first of all, avoid. Avoid what? Jan. What kind of jan? Samsadi. Society of all men. Arati, jan samsadi. That's another thing that puts people off, and they say, look, I'm being pushed towards renunciation. Maybe the scriptures are not for me. So I'm going to come samsadi. I'm going to come to it when we do verse number 11. What does he mean? Avoid the company of people. Actually, he means just avoid crowded places or crowded occasions or crowded events, in simple words. But that's the solution. Then whose company should we keep? Of course, then, there's a story of Mullah Nasruddin who once told his wife, he said, listen, why don't you go away for some time and live in solitude? And the wife said, what? I'm going to be bored to death. What in heaven will I do? So Mullah Nasruddin said, listen, if you can't stand your own company and you're going to be bored in your own company, how about the others who live in your company? How can you then be tolerated by people who are living with you? So is it your own company that you can't tolerate, that we don't live in solitude? We escape ourselves. We are escaping from our true self, true knowledge. There's nothing we want to explore in solitude. So Bhagwan says, okay, even if if I'm requesting you not to be in crowded places or be extroverted, let's call it, then what should I do? Suddenly I can't go into solitude. Suddenly, because see, from Janmantar, I'm so used to extrovertedness. So he says, okay, no problem. Keep the company of satsang, people who are seeking the same truth, or seeking, even if you're not seeking it, keep the company of those who are seeking some higher truth. And or they may be some swamis. Now of course it's online, so even if we connect to swamis online, it's like keeping their company, it's like a satsang. And keep the company of those who are seeking something higher. So you may escape this drag into the sansar, which is keeping you constantly engaged and repeatedly, no matter how much. So I have a car, and then I have a house, and then, so what's the end of it all? This food, travel, material achievement, it is still keeping me firmly grounded only and only in sansar. Okay. How to get this vairagya thought? Even the very thought of vairagya, I cannot get. So that's why Bhagwan says, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Think about the very dosh of our own lives, which are a big cycle. just a complete big cycle of birth and growth and decay and disintegration and death and over again. He said, if you just dwell on this thought, maybe you'll pull yourself out of your complete engagement with a false world at some point, because this will go on for lives together. So the thing is that even big business magnates and very successful politicians or kings and queens, they have enjoyed material objects thoroughly to the hilt. We can even say that about ourselves, in fact, that what is it that we haven't enjoyed, जिसका भोग हमने नहीं किया है. हमने हर चीज का भोग कर लिया है अब तक, यहाँ तक आते आते. And all these kings and these big business people who were the richest people on earth and who strode the earth as if the earth belonged to them, all the Elon Musks, Elon Musk of course is alive, but what about those in the past? Where are they now? These emperors and these, even if you go into our own lineage, our grandparents who owned big kothis, if they came from a very wealthy family, where are they now? The Bible says, dust unto dust. You are dust and you will be interred into dust. That's all. So I'm reminded of a poem we used to do in school, and so that's why you may have heard of it, a very famous one by Percy Shelley, P.B. Shelley, Ozymandias. I'm sure you've heard of it. And it inspires me to read it over again when I can. Ozymandias, so I'm going to take the liberty. It says, P.B. Shelley says, I met a traveler from an antique land. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, meaning who is reporting what he saw. Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Trunkless legs without a body, stand in the desert, and near them on the sand, half sunk in the sand, a shattered visage lies, a shattered face. And what about that face? Whose frown and wrinkled lip, wrinkled, why? Because he thought that he was the greatest of them all, and there was a sneer of cold command on his lips. Oh, that cold command, that sneer, that arrogance, that is still there on the lips. Of what? Of that head that lies without his trunk, half sunk in the sand. The arrogance is still etched on the face. So how ironical this is. This is the destiny of all of us, actually. So the cold command and the sneer of cold command on his visage. And on the plaque, so nearby there's a plaque. And there used to be a big statue, I suppose, which broke and shattered. And on the plaque are the words, my name is Ozymandias. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. That means be fearful of me. I am the mighty. But the traveler said, apart from this, nothing remains round the decay of that colossal wreck. That colossal wreck, around it stretched far into the distance, only sand. So, the great Ozymandias. Now, we are the small kings of our own small little kingdom, possessing our 2-3 little cars and 2-3 little homes and etc. etc. So, we are also quite powerful in that sense and arrogant of these possessions. Now, the word vairagya shatters us. We say, what? Am I supposed to give it up? Now, the simple truth is, we can give up what belongs to us. But if it is true that nothing belongs to us in sansar, because finally it's going to be wrested away from us, the way Ozymandias, his own visage, his own body, his own statue lay shattered on the ground. Where is he now? So what are these objects? They are not going to be around with us. We are not going to be around with them. Do they belong to us? No, we are trustees of these objects for a small period of time. And therefore we can say they don't belong to us in the real sense. Naturally. So if they don't belong to us, how can we give it up? What a paradox. I'm not even allowed to give up anything because it doesn't belong to us. So, what is this? This Vairagya? This Vairagya is nothing but shaking off Maipan. Mai or Mera, that's all. Everything else we will have around us. Our cars, our homes, our families, our relationships, our achievements, our grand experiences of whatever we have done in the past. Nothing will go away, yes. But Mai or Mera Pan is what is grounding us and keeping us away from our sambandh. Our real relationship should be with that tattva, that essence. What sambandh? We are that essence. See the irony of this? We are made of that essence. It's like the wave who's struggling to understand ki how is it that you cannot admire the great heights to which I can jump in the ocean, and मेरी मौज को आप क्यों नहीं पहचान रहे हैं? क्यों पहचानेंगे? वो मौज तो 2 मिनट की है. And the waves go back into the ocean. इसमें क्या पहचान, क्या अहंकार? So अपना आपका तत्व है, उसके साथ संबंध जब होगा तभी you can shake off the मैं और मेरापन. Because right now, what is the मैं और मेरापन attached to, associated with? The मैं and मेरापन right now is attached only to मेरा शरीर, my body, my name, my beliefs, my opinions, my religion, my community, my country, my knowledge, मेरा ज्ञान, my sacrifices, my nationality. And therefore, this is all in the world of kshetra, of the world of matter. Then how can I have my merapan with my real tattva essence? Therefore, Kabira used to despair when he sat on the banks of the river and he contemplated in solitude and watched the milling crowd around him, all jostling with each other on the ghats of Varanasi, if you see them, and millions of tourists. They used to be called pilgrims in those days, but now we have pilgrims and tourists all mingled into one, and they're all milling around in a big crowd, some wanting some great rewards and benefits from praying to the mighty Ganga. God knows what they carry into their hearts when they all visit, except the thirst for the tattva. They carry a whole lot of things. And he used to sit, and this is history. He is not a mythological figure. Kabir would sit and he would despair. And he would say, Ki chalti chaki dekh kar. And you know, on the ghats in Varanasi, we also have so many times bodies being carried by pallbearers to the funeral ground, to the cremation ghat. So what? That's a common sight, because there are so many people love to have their cremation done at a holy site, right? So it's a common sight, through the streets. I don't know of now, because I don't know if they're carried in vans, but they used to be carried by pallbearers. Aram se Ram Naam Satya Hai. All through the day you could hear this, the resounding words in the streets. And when Kabir also saw this, he said, Chalati chaki dekh kar diya Kabira roye. When he saw this procession, diya Kabira roye, do patan ke beech mein. Do patan means it's pieces of logs, right, on which the body is carried. Patan. Do patan ke beech mein sabut bacha na koi. Sabut bachana koi means it's only dead piece of matter being carried on 2 logs of wood. 2 logs of wood. Do patan ke beech mein people are carrying this piece of matter to the cremation ground, and yet they have lived a life full of wanting this or that from the world of matter. Chalati chaki dekh kar diya Kabira roye. So roye here stands for the despair he felt at why can't people see the truth? Why can't they spend the life in more meaningful pursuits? Because in the end, that's what is going to be the end of everyone. Do patan ke beech mein, between the 2 logs, a piece of matter being carried by loved ones. That's the end. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. So the vision being evoked over here may be a little strong, maybe a little shocking also. But in the Indian culture, death and life are talked about in the same breath. They are not treated as separate, Janma Mrityu, because they are part of the same cycle. And once we realize that, we can be free of the ahankar. So just like the cold sneer of arrogance still lay on the face of that broken visage of that great king, yes, we also carry our same ahankar and our dambh and hypocrisy and krodh. We do carry it with us. Maybe nobody makes statues of us and keeps those impressions etched on in stone, but remember, the causal body, that is the Karan Sharir, is going to carry the same impressions through our lives ahead. And we know this law we have already covered so many times. Just a reminder that yes, though that abhiman, that calm, this krodh, the desires that we carry are going to be carried with us. I thought of an example the other day. When we are in school, when we were in school, we studied a whole lot of subjects, right? Some of the subjects we don't even remember. So we went to this chemistry lab and we did some experiments, and then we wrote down, meticulously put down the findings of the experiment and what was the observation, what was the conclusion, what was the hypothesis, and we created this beautiful scientific log, and that was our chemistry lesson. Do any one of us remember that chemistry lesson? Or even any of the laws of chemistry or physics? Perhaps not. So what is it that has remained with us? So when we put our mind and heart and the meticulous way in which we recorded the scientific log, we put our attention, our focus, our love for learning into that activity. Today, what has remained with us? Chemistry, physics, biology? No. Those were just mediums. What has remained with us is that propensity for attention, that love of learning, that love of reading, that propensity for attention and focus, and what Krishna calls ekagrata. That capacity has remained with us. And therefore schooling is important. Schooling our minds into ekagrata. Right? And therefore we can say, in the same way, the way we maybe we don't remember why we were angry with someone or the other, or why we were upset with someone or the other, why we thought ill of that person for days together till that whole episode was over. But till some episode, one episode which is not to our liking, till it's over, till it's out of our minds, you know how it pricks the mind and how it occupies the mind and how it fills our hours. That is the loss. And after that we don't remember कि हाँ उससे कुछ गड़बड़ हुई थी, but I don't remember. Office में हाँ कुछ गड़बड़ हुई थी, I don't remember what the reason was, but what remains? What remains is how we reacted with anger, with vengefulness, or with bitterness. That will remain. In the same way, the desires we entertain, we won't even remember. Like the children who don't remember the toys of their childhood, but that propensity, that capacity for hoarding, for wanting, for playing, for that desire remains. And so also in next life. Therefore, in the 7th verse, Bhagavan had already said, he said that man, dambh, hinsa, that vengefulness, they will carry forward. And you may not know why, what was the object of all those things. It doesn't matter what the object was. Doesn't matter what subject we studied. But we carry the impressions. So, now coming back to Vairagyam. The Vairagyam is also an attitude. It will carry its fragrance, its impression in the lives ahead. In fact, it will become our vasana. Now, vasana in the Vedantic sense, I'm using the word, not in the common sense of lust. Vas means fragrance. In Marathi, in fact, vas means fragrance. So, fragrance of what? Fragrance of, like, the flower has been crushed, suppose, and you leave it there behind in the forest, and you come home, and the fragrance of it is still on your fingertips. Why? The flower is gone, it's crushed. Yes, our bodies are gone, it will die. But the fragrance, the vas of what we have experienced and what we have chosen to experience, and the attitudes we have carried and the attitudes we have chosen to carry? Have they been of forgiveness, of detachment, of speaking for the benefit of others, for working for others, or have they been steeped in desire and forgetfulness, मैं कौन हूँ, and indulgence, overindulgence, oversleep and over shopping and binge watching? If we have done all that, okay, so those impressions will carry into our guna, the qualities of tamas or rajas or sattvic guna in our next lives. It's the same way with sandalwood. You crush it, you leave it behind, the fragrance of sandalwood remains on our fingertips. That's our life. That fragrance will remain. So how do I detach? Now there you can detach in three ways, because we have a sthula sharir and a mind and an intellect. I am a whole bundle of that. Mind, body, intellect and ahankar, of course. So my sthula body, I can slowly detach from my dhan, the property I own. Not literally, but at least we can bequeath it, that after I am gone, this is where it goes. And try not to keep it within the family, because then the family is extension of our own bodies, and then we say, हाँ वो मेरे साथ ही रहेगा. So that is not actually giving up dhan. So we may find a worthy place after our death. So the dhan, what has happened the moment I have written out my will and bequeath it to someone else or to some other institution or organization or to a cause, what happens is that I have already developed a kind of, it's still with me, the house is still with me, the property is still with me for now, but in my mind it says, अरे मेरे बाद तो वो वहाँ जाने वाला है. I've already developed a distance towards it. That's the trick. धन से हम दूर नहीं भाग रहे हैं. So therefore vairagya is not to be dismissed as ये मेरे लिए तो नहीं है, ये तो it is for the renunciates and for sannyasis. No, we have to practice that vairagya here and now where I am in the limited way that we can, because its fragrance will carry forward to the next life and the next, where I may become a greater vairagi or greater renunciate or have more capacity for renunciation. But the capacity has to start now. So that dhan, that distance in the mind has to be created. चलो इनको मैंने बोल दिया है, after my death this is where it will go. And also my sthula शरीर के साथ और क्या जुड़ा हुआ है? My appearance. My appearance is this and that. उसके साथ भी थोड़ा distance लगाओ कि अच्छा the hair is graying, it's okay. I may allow it to gray instead of dyeing it. I may not allow the body to go into bad health. Of course not. That's not the idea. I may still like to keep my body in very good health with yoga and pranayam and meditation. Why? Because I need my body to be healthy so that I can have my jap, tap, dhyan, satsang and swadhyay and my studies. I need energy for that. Because if that is my goal, suppose, if that is my goal, then for that goal I need an instrument. And I need an alert mind and a healthy body which is not paining, aching all the time. And that instrument will lead me towards my dhey, my goal of my tattva, my essence, what Krishna is trying to point me towards, to know my real self. So losing my interest in ornamentation but keeping a healthy body. Now, what about the distance from the mind? Okay. Now, कर्तृत्व, मेरा कर्तृत्व का जो अभिमान है ना, कर्तृत्व अभिमान, मैंने ये किया है, I have done this, I have done that, this is my achievement. हमारे, and the extension of me is my son, my daughter, my family, my son-in-law. उन्होंने ये किया है, उनका पास ये है, वगैरह वगैरह. These are at what level? Thought level. This is मैं और मेरापन, मेरे पास all the experiences are gone, my actions are gone. मैंने कर दिया, they are all past, but I continue to talk about them and therefore they become mine now, but they are actually gone. So kartritva mein at the thought level to renounce everything that is past, because it's past. So that is a renunciation at the mental level. मैंने ये किया है, मैंने वो किया है. And ज्ञातापन at the intellectual level, कि I am my buddhi, you know, मैं इतना intelligent हूँ, this is what I can understand, this is what I can read, I know this and I know that, I know physics, I know archery, I know What are the subjects that we are, I know about the company leadership, I know about investments in the stock market, I know about Upanishads. It's all same thing. If you put it in one basket of knowledge, it's just knowledge. It has not led to my liberation. So if you keep it just at knowledge level, it's all in the same basket. हाँ, और उसका भी अभिमान, मैं इसका ज्ञाता हूँ, मेरी बुद्धि इतनी प्रखर है. So that ज्ञातापन is at the intellectual level. Drop it. So when they say vairagya, drop it at 3 levels. Body level, all these things belong to me for a temporary. I am a trustee, and for a temporary period, and I have done this or that. Mind level, मैं ज्ञाता हूँ, I understand so many subjects. Buddhi level, we can drop all this. That is vairagya at man, buddhi and intellect level. Why does abhiman grip us in the first place? मैं इतना अभिमानी हो क्यों जाता हूँ? Simple. You will find in any gathering that you go to, people will be comparisons. ये ऐसा है, वो वैसा है, हमने ये किया है, उन्होंने ये किया है. Now these comparisons, we get drawn into it without thinking, and we become addicted to comparing ourselves. कि अब वो कोई कंपेयर नहीं कर रहा है तो भी हम किसी गैदरिंग में जाके उनकी बातें सुन के अपने को कंपेयर कर रहे हैं. दिस इज द वर्स्ट काइंड ऑफ लोएस्ट सेल्फ एस्टीम दैट वी कैन सिंक इनटू, बिकॉज दीज कंपैरिजंस लीड टू माय बड़प्पन और माय छोटापन. वी गेट दीज कॉम्प्लेक्सेस. जैसे कि एक गांव में एक ही लखपति है, उसके पास 1 लाख रुपया है, 1 lakh, and he is the only one who has it. Now he is going to be arrogant and say, I am a lakhpati. But suppose in that village now grew into a big township, and that township became very prosperous with businessmen, and now there are crorpatis in that town, millionaires. What happens to this Lakhpati now? The Lakhpati now feels totally dejected, and a sense of loss of identity and feeling good about himself. What nonsense is this? The whole ahankar, Ahankar comes from the word aham, right? Aham means I, मैं, मेरापन is either bigger or better than others, or smaller or insignificant compared to others. Now this is only comparison. Aham is nothing. Aham is a projection of our own minds. So giving up ahankar is only to give up comparisons. I mean, resist it when people are talking. They've just got into the habit. It's become habitual. Anything that's habitual, our attention doesn't go to it. Now we have to be attentive when people speak, and when they talk and discuss certain things, or when we speak or think, even to our thoughts, we have to be attentive. That's all. Comparisons are odious. There's nothing to be compared in the world. जो उनके भाग्य में है, वो उनके भाग्य में प्रारब्ध से है. जो हमारे में है वो हमारे प्रारब्ध से है, ड्यू टू आवर एक्शंस एंड कर्मास ऑफ सो मेनी मिलियंस ऑफ लाइव्स. हमारा कर्म उनका कर्म कंपेयर कैसे कर सकते हैं? कैन वी इवन कंपेयर द प्रारब्ध ऑफ वन एंड द अदर? इट्स इम्पॉसिबल. दे कमिंग फ्रॉम अ डिफरेंट जर्नी ऑफ थाउजेंड्स ऑफ लाइव्स, एंड वी आर कमिंग फ्रॉम अ जर्नी ऑफ थाउजेंड्स ऑफ लाइव्स विच इनकम्पेरेबल. हाउ कैन वी इवन कंपेयर? इट्स रिडिकुलस इफ वी थिंक अबाउट कंपैरिजन, क्योंकि वो प्रारब्ध हमारा है और केवल उनका है. तो Kabir again says, and I'm going to close here, बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, and you have heard this is a very common one. बुरा जो देखा मैं चला, बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा न मिलिया कोई, जो दिल खोजा अपना, मुझसे बुरा न कोई. Right. So there's also a doha about this. The doha is, तेरे भावे जो करे, भलाओ बुराओ संसार. तेरे भावे जो करे, let the sansar talk about ups and downs and all their reflections of ऊंच नीच. Narayan तू बैठी के, Narayan is addressing the listener, तू बैठी के, sit in a corner, अपनो भुवन बुहार. Bhuvan, look at your own home. Apno bhuvan buhar. That means look at your own mind. J. Krishnamurti used to say, put your own house in order first. Put your own house in order first. And therefore, Bhagwan requires us to have done certain work upon ourselves, and made our own chitta shuddhi and man shuddhi and cleanliness. It's like going to the temple and we cleanse ourselves completely. And then we say, okay, I've come to the feet of God. It's like that with the mind. I'm looking for that ultimate highest truth. It is subtle, it's beautiful, it's expansive. I cannot go there with a cluttered mind. And therefore, how to get out of this ahankar, we will see the next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti.